Todd Davis, Henry Chisholm, Zach Stevens are here with you the Monday after the nightmare. I tried to wake up from it, guys, and no, the nightmare still here. Still happened yesterday.
Yeah, I tried to find a stat to make me feel better. Obviously didn't go great. But I was looking through. So in 1989, the Steelers started 0-2. They had a 51-0 loss, and they wound up winning a playoff game.
How about that? But not 0-3, huh?
No. Nobody was 0-3. Titans in 2009 were 0-6 with a 59-0 loss. Finished 8-8.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice little turnaround.
I'd take an 8-9 record right now.
I mean,
yeah.
what is your line?
Or would I? Maybe it's best for this team just to bottom out at this point. That's a big conversation, which we're going to have tomorrow to get into. But we're all back today. We made it through the night, and so did Sean Payton, so did George Payton, so did Vance Joseph, probably the biggest name that people are calling for. And we just got off the conference call with Sean Payton today after the game, and he was asked after yesterday's performance, is anyone's job in jeopardy from coach to player? And Sean said, no, but I wouldn't tell you guys that on a conference call anyway, but no. So he did tell us no one's job is in jeopardy following that.
Kind of told us that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just not a fan of firing 3 games into the season. I just don't know if that will be the thing that makes this a 0-3 to a, let's say, 9-8 or 8-9 team. Granted, big changes need to be made. I just don't know if firing is the right way to go.
I think that, it's just tough when you play your cards that early. Because if you want to make changes, sure, you can fire Vance Joseph and then replace him. And then what happens if they go out there and lose by 30 this week? And then it's like, let's get rid of the linebackers coach next. And all of a sudden, spending those cards this early puts you in a tough spot. At the same time, though, you did give up 10 touchdowns, which I think the record before that was 8 touchdowns in a game. No, somebody did have 10. So it's just one of those things where if they fire him, you get why, but you also get why they'd not want to do it quite yet.
Just really quick to piggyback off the 10 touchdowns thing. The Dolphins, after yesterday, have the most touchdowns in the NFL. I just know it's more than 10 because yesterday they had 10. The second team with the most touchdowns is the Chargers. They have 10. So yesterday... Total. Yesterday, the Dolphins themselves, just if they played that game, have the most touchdowns in the NFL, tied with the Chargers, just based off of yesterday's game. That's how bad it was, and that's why no one could have seen this coming. We're literally 3 weeks into the season. Sean Payton's honeymoon is over with Broncos fans quicker than Russell Wilson's was last year. I would have never seen that coming. And why there's coaches on the staff, coordinators, Vance Joseph, that fans are pounding the table to be fired. Todd, you never see this 3 weeks into a season, even with a bad staff. And we thought Sean Payton was putting together a good staff. Certainly Sean Payton has a 15-year track record of being a pretty damn good coach. He's got that Super Bowl on his record, more winning seasons than losing seasons. His worst record entering this year was 7-9, which he did 3 times, but over the course of 15, or he did it 4 times over the course of 15 years. That's not bad. And the Broncos traded a first and a second round pick for him because they thought he was this good. So in no world could we have ever seen this coming. Not just for the Broncos, but for any team.
Yeah, the honeymoon stage of this marriage is over, and people are calling for it to be annulled. They don't even want it on the record. They don't even, not even divorce. I don't even want this part of my marriage history. Can we just scratch it all off? I can't believe that we're really starting off the season like this and a loss like that. But this has to be the end of the curse. There's no way it gets worse than this. I don't think any game, losing another game after this is just going to be a loss. But losing by 50 points, 10 touchdowns, 70 points scored on you, just ultimately. And the thing about it is, if you watch the game, The Miami Dolphins aren't even trying to win. They're trying to run the ball out, run the clock out. They're trying to run the ball. They're trying to get it to just give them the ball back. And just every
yards.
ran went for like,
It's like, oops.
50 yards. Like there's no way that the Broncos had a shot in that game in the second half. It was bad from the start.
What's the equivalent of 70 points being put up to you on defense, on offense? Like, shutouts happen way more than 70 points happen. So is it like obviously a shutout plus 10 turnovers? Like, what would this look like if it was the opposite?
The Bears had like 45 passing yards and like 80 rushing yards or something yesterday. It's not that bad, but it did come to mind pretty quickly.
And they put up 10 points?
They did put up 10 points.
And the Broncos offense put up 3 more points than that.
Wow.
So, I mean, the Broncos offense certainly was not the issue yesterday, but I mean, people in the comments saying pain, this was pain all over the place. And I totally understand what you guys are saying about, like, what's firing someone 3 games into the season going to do. And I don't disagree with you at all. But the way that I've started to view this over the past, like, 16 hours is, do I think Vance Joseph is going to be the defensive coordinator of this team week 1 of the 2024 season? No, nothing that I've seen in these first 3 weeks. It's not just yesterday either. The worst offensive efficiency in week 1, gave up 35 points to the Commanders in week 2, who, by the way, I was wrong. The Commanders scored 3 points yesterday, not 0, but gave up 3 points. Or the Commanders only scored 3 points against the Bills at home yesterday after the Broncos gave up 35 points. And just the way the defense looks too. Like the stats are as miserable as you want it to be. Another stat, it's the first time a team has ever given up 350 passing yards and 350 rushing yards in a game. So it's not just like the edges weren't set and that was the only issue. The issue was just everywhere with the defense. So it looks bad on paper. It looks bad on film. And it's looked bad all 3 games. So the way I view it is, I think this is a firing that's going to come eventually, whether it's next week because it's not happening today, whether it's week 8 at the bye, whether it's after this season. And once you kind of know that, then you just make the move right away, in my opinion. And I don't think that Sean Payton's going to make the move, not because he didn't tell us today, but because how bad would that look for Sean Payton? And at the NFL, when it boils down to everything, players, Todd, you even touched on this with players yesterday. Players, coaches, GMs, everyone, owners, everyone in the NFL. It's all about protecting yourself first and then protecting the team and helping the team. Sean Payton's in a spot that he never saw coming. He is now in a spot where he's kind of going to protect himself a little bit in his image, because coming in here, he was this Hall of Fame coach, had this glistening image. It was like no wrong could be done except 3 weeks into the season. Now all wrong is done. He wants to protect himself. So I think that's a big reason. He would be admitting massive failure just 3 weeks into this. So I think that's another big reason why change isn't going to happen right now.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. And last night I tried to sit back and think, like, how are we in this position 3 weeks in? How does the defense look so horrible? After playing for Vance, I think we were a top 5 defense both years that he was my head coach. And he had a lot to do with that. But now I thought back to training camp and how he saw that the year before was such a good defense that he tried to change his verbiage and change his plays and trying to learn what these guys had already known. I think that took away from his game plan and him being able to be himself. He maybe looked at maybe what Evero Edro did too much and tried to implement into his system too much, that now that the system that he brung and his system don't really mingle well together. So now you got guys out there trying to run, quote unquote, 2 systems that don't fit together, instead of Vance, like, I know it was a good defense, but he could have came in here and took control and shut everything down and kind of just said, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to run it. This is how I've run it for years and I've been successful. And I think that's what has really I think that's what you see. That's what has happened on Sunday, is like the meshing of 2 defenses. Instead of it just being his own, it didn't work out the way everybody hoped that it would.
You know what that reminds me of, Todd? That reminds me of last year's Broncos offense. Nathaniel Hackett was going to blend his offense with the Packers background and Aaron Rodgers' background. He was going to mesh that with Russell Wilson, and it was going to be the best of both worlds until it was the worst of both worlds. And what did that turn out to be? Disastrous. What is this defense so far? Disastrous. So that's very interesting how those two really align.
And I don't think that Vance is totally gone at this point. Like it's going to happen eventually, because there's still the chance that they pull things together in the second half of the season and win 4 of their last 5 games, and all of a sudden you're saying like, oh, this is kind of the vision here. This was going to happen. It's definitely like trending that way, obviously. But I think the biggest reason that I probably would have fired him yesterday is because I think that somebody else could do a better job. Like, I think that that's kind of what it boils down to. I look at what they've done the first 3 weeks and say, yeah, at this point, I'd rather see what Christian Parker can do, because I think there's a good chance that he can give me better results. I think it's kind of that simple to me. But I don't know. There's no right answers when you're 0-3 and the season's kind of doomed. So it is what it is.
Well, and I think going to your point, Todd, about how it's like two defenses trying to mesh. One of the things we heard about the offense last year was that there was just so much confusion because it was like 2 different offenses that really didn't mesh together, and they're kind of using Russell Wilson's lingo and also using the Packers lingo and Hackett, and things didn't really work, and there was a lot of confusion. That's certainly what you saw yesterday on the field, is just so much confusion, and maybe Vance trying to do too much where he just loses sight of what his players' strengths are, and loses sight that Damari Mathis is really, really struggling. That DTY is playing in his 30th snap on defense in the NFL in the first snap of the game yesterday, and just trying to do too much zone. I mean, how many zones were there just guys wide open? And what do we say? Especially if Jalen Waddle's not playing, have Pat follow Tyreek Hill. I didn't see that much at all yesterday. Instead, it was, you saw clips of Randy Gregory trying to cover a zone with Tyreek Hill in there. You saw Tyreek Hill just wide open in the middle of the field because zones were breaking down. And I think he just is trying to do way too much. Now you're week 3. And Todd, how much can you change with a defense, or the way you approach a defense, or the way you call a defense once you're a month into the season?
You don't have to change too much, but you can get real simple and real vanilla. You can kind of scale back all the different schemes that they were putting in, all the different personnels. Like, hey, maybe we only have 3 personnels going into this game. We have a package on 3rd down, and then we have 2 packages for 1st and 2nd down. Like I said before on this show, that when we won the Super Bowl, we really only ran like 4 plays. But the thing about it is we made everything look similar, so offenses never knew what we were running, but we really only had like 4. And I'm not lying, like there was literally like 4 calls that we called, and then we would have 1 changeup, 4 calls and 1 changeup, but that was it. And so I think he can be that vanilla with it. Yes, we had a good set of cornerbacks and a good set of pass rushers to make teams have to prepare for us, so we could be vanilla.
Yeah.
But I think that being vanilla might be best for this team, and he should go back to running what he runs. You know what I'm saying? He shouldn't try to blend or run any plays from last year at this point. Stick to what you know. He's a successful defensive coordinator. He just needs to run his plays.
Yeah, you can't just show up and say like, well, maybe you can try it, but he just came in and kind of said like, I'm going number 2 to this team. Like, this is the players running that, like, I'm putting the players in the situation they want to be in. They're going to kind of get the control to keep the verbiage the way that it was. And that's just not... It's easy to say now after seeing it, but that just didn't work. Like, you need to be in there as like the strong leader of the defense, and maybe that isn't the problem, but it's one of the decisions that he made, and now here we are.
It's such a good opportunity to say leader of men, Henry.
Yeah.
You said leader of the defense.
Yeah, that died years ago.
He can't be Coach E last year. He's proven that. He's tried, and I understand why he tried to do that.
Yes.
And it was a big tip of the cap. Todd, you said you'd never seen a coordinator do that, or a coach do that, where they come in and say, you know what, I'm going to learn all of your lingo. I'm going to try to learn your defense because you guys were good in it last year, and I'm going to try to do that to help you. So I commend Vance for trying to do that. It's not working. He's got to change things, and the way to do it is being simple and is being vanilla. And what does Vance do? Man-to-man. A lot of that. That's where the Broncos, I think, are going to succeed the most if they're going to change things up a little bit.
I don't know.
Did you see the holes yesterday?
Yeah, but again, then you're asking Damari and Isang Bassi to... After seeing them also, it's like, I don't know that I want them playing man coverage either.
I can't have those holes, though.
Yeah, I think man coverage is the best. And when we talked about Damari, like most of the plays that he missed on, he was so close in man coverage.
True.
when they started running a lot of zones, when you saw guys wide open, it's not like Damari was getting beat on double moves and just 20 yards behind the guy. Like, he was there and missing the ball on the catch. And I think some of those situations, if you have Justin Simmons leaning heavily to his side, he can help him out a little bit more. Damari can be more aggressive. But yeah, just going back to what Vance did with trying to put this defense together, like even watching tape, you could watch a tape and see what Edro Evero did on third down, and you think it's just a good play, but you don't know that the coach that he was playing had a huge tip on third down, and that's why he called that call. That's not actually his third down choice for, you know what I'm saying, that down and distance.
Not in a vacuum, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
But if you base it off of that, then you think that, oh, this is just a good play that he put together. But in reality, every play has a unique perspective to why it was called for every defense or offensive coordinator. And sometimes when you're not the guy making that call, watching tape, you won't have any understanding for the whole complexity that comes with calling that call.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah. And luckily this week, I don't want to say it's like a simple test, but I mean, all you got to do is keep Justin Fields in the pocket and you're not giving up many points. Like, this is a week where if you play man coverage and Damari is a step away, I don't think he's going to hit that window. You know, as long as you're within that step, that's probably good enough. And so maybe this is a week where you can go pretty vanilla and just say, you know what, it's cover one. We're going to spy Justin, and that's it. But I'm curious what they do the rest of the year.
Well, I'm curious if you guys are going to think that this stat I have for you about next week is good news or bad news. And we're not really going to fully turn the page to the Bears, but I have a very interesting stat I ran across this morning, which could leave you a little more nervous about this upcoming game against the Bears. But first, I want to tell you about how you can watch the game in Chicago. If you want to go, we've got a tailgate going on. DNVR Bears, DNVR Broncos is teaming up to bring you an awesome tailgate. There's going to be tons of Broncos fans at this tailgate in Chicago. So if you want to go, make sure to grab some tailgate tickets with us over at thednvr.com, and also get tickets for the game over at Game Time. I bet you can get a flight out to Chicago and tickets to this game for less than you can get tickets to a Broncos game in Denver for. So if you want to do that, make a little weekend of it, check out our friends over at Game Time. And of course, you can use this if you're going to any concert. Maybe you're seeing Taylor Swift not at Arrowhead. Maybe you're seeing a concert at the Pepsi at Ball Arena, I should say, or anywhere. Use the code DNVR over at Game Time to get $20 off your first purchase. So when you download the Game Time app, use the code DNVR when you sign up, and you get $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time.
And also go check out Spirit Hound, because they've got all sorts of great stuff. One of the really cool programs is that if you bring juniper berries to their Lions distillery, they'll give you a free cocktail, because they like to use all local ingredients for their whiskey, for their gin, for their vodka. And like I said, it's made right here in Lyons, Colorado. They have an award-winning whiskey. It actually won the 2022 Whiskey of the Year at the London Spirits Competition. Spirit Hound products are available in 40 states and across Colorado. They have a new tasting room in Highlands, and their whiskey, vodka, and gin can be purchased at stores across Colorado or ordered online to 40-plus states. Don't worry, you don't have to get a retriever to track a bottle down. Head over to spirithounds.com for availability and details on how and where to buy.
Okay, so Henry, you're going to have a hoot with the first part of this stat.
Oh, boy.
Justin Fields as a passer this year, from 10 to 19 air yards. You want to know what his passer rating is?
17.
It's a good guess.
I'll take 16.
0. 0.0
you
passer
go.
rating, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's completed 1 of 11 passes for 15 yards, 1.4 yards per attempt. Don't have to worry about him as a passer from 10 to 19 yards. But what did the Broncos do yesterday? They gave up way too many big plays. It's the only area Justin Fields is a good passer so far this year. 20-plus air yards, 121.1 passer rating, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 6 of 14 passing. Obviously, it's not a great completion percentage, but when you think that it's over 20 yards, that's actually not too bad. 147 yards and 10.5 yards per attempt. That is something that the Broncos cannot allow. There's 2 things the Broncos can't allow. Justin Fields to run for 150 yards and Justin Fields to throw bombs on them. is that too simplistic of a game plan to go in with, Todd? Like thinking X's and O's on the defensive side, or is that something that can be done?
I think that's something that can be done. Hopefully we'll have Justin Simmons back. I don't know whether or not Josie will be healthy, but hopefully he's back. But yeah, you want to take away their strengths as our defensive coordinator. And luckily, this Bears team doesn't have many of them. So I think it can be an easy game plan if we just go in there and handle our business. But I think that's easier said than done right now with where this team is.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the Broncos are favored 2.5 points on the road. I think it's 2.5 still.
I saw 3.5.
3.5 points on the road. Doesn't feel like a team that should be favored, but then you're going up against the worst team in the NFL. So if not now, then when?
The Bears are looking at the Broncos and saying, we're going up against the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a case. I hope that I hope the whole team is going into this week saying, like, I'm pissed off. Let's go beat these losers by 50. And I obviously don't think it's actually going to happen, but the Bears are bad enough that if you want to just, like, take out all this anger on them, it's right there for the taking.
It is, and this is going to be a game where we see how bad the Broncos are. Hopefully that's not what we're seeing, but this is a game where Sean couldn't have asked for a better game to come after a 7-20 loss. Yep. The Bears, although it's on the road, not ideal, but still, it's the Bears. There's just that little part that, man, if we lose, then, oh my God, we're exposed to being the worst team in the NFL right now, which is really scary. And that kind of brings up an interesting question. Did the Broncos quit yesterday? Because I think that has a lot to do with how the Broncos are going to respond. If the Broncos didn't quit and they cared, then, Henry, I think they can come out and, as Von Miller would say, whoop they ass next week against the Bears. But if they did quit, then everything Sean tells them today is probably just going to go right over their heads, in one ear, out the other. Practice is just going to be going through the motions. And then this is an area where the Broncos certainly could lose this game because you're going up against another NFL team. And the reason I asked the question about quitting, not just giving up 70 points, but it was Jason Garrett. I'm trying to find the exact quote, but Jason Garrett yesterday said, I can't find the quote, but he said yesterday after the game that the Broncos quit on this team, and it was obviously embarrassing, disgusting, all of that. But he flat out said the players quit in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when the backups can come in there and still move you out your spot and run for maybe 100 yards in the last 2 quarters, it definitely feels like the guys weren't giving it their all, and maybe they were. Man, I just can't say that I felt like they were, but they're frustrated. I think everybody saw Garrett Bowles in his locker talking about how he's been here for 7 years and all we do is lose. Like when you have that mindset and then you come up against a situation where you're down 30 points to start the second half, like
exactly,
you're already in a mentality like, here we go again with this losing thing. We've been doing it for 7 years, and it's a low point. So yeah, man, I don't feel like the guys were giving it their all the second half, and who blames them? I was ready to turn the TV off, so I quit too.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like when you're down by 40 points in the fourth quarter, of course you're not going to be as fiery as you were coming out thinking like, the season's on the line. This is our last chance to put something together. Like the game is over. What happens from that point on legitimately doesn't matter. I guess if you wind up in a situation with a tiebreaker that comes down to points differential, then it could matter. I don't foresee the Broncos being in that situation. So I can't sit here and say like, yeah, they quit, like they weren't trying. But I will say they definitely didn't look as fiery as they were, and I certainly wouldn't have been. Pat Surtain gave up that bomb to Chosen Anderson, almost said Robbie. That's not something he normally does. No. And I don't think that's because he quit. But I do think that if he was just maybe a little more locked in, that probably doesn't happen.
Yeah, and tackling was a massive issue to start the game.
Yeah.
And it didn't get any better at all. And from outside perspective, Todd, I feel like sometimes tackling can show the effort of a team at times. I understand sometimes you can be trying full go and the tackling just isn't there, but I feel like just with how bad it continued to be throughout the game, that can kind of show it too. Just the effort dying down a little bit.
Yeah, or guys are just tired, man. I think guys were it started off bad. There were so many times throughout the game, even in the first quarter, where they had chances to get running backs and wide receivers down. They just continued to miss tackles. Yeah, but I don't know. Over time throughout the game, I think they're tired, they're frustrated. So yeah, all that mixing together, that is like quitting. So you do see like the missed tackles and the extra effort is not there. And I'm not running down the field from a player's perspective. Like, I'm not running down the cross field 50 yards to catch somebody. We're already down 40 points. Like, let's just go home, guys. Like, we're ready to go home. Enough is enough. And Hank talked about being fiery on the sideline. Like, if you're ever in the game where you're getting your butt whooped, there's nothing more annoying than that guy coming on, come on, guys, let's go. Come on, we need one stop. Bruh, if you don't shut up and sit down, like, we're getting whooped right now. Like, leave that for another day. So I know there was no energy on the sideline.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you guys saw this picture, but it goes to show I know. It's so bad.
It looks fake.
It looks like
doesn't
dead bodies.
It does. Yeah. It does.
Or it looks like a second grade football game where kids just fall left and right on the field.
That's 6 of the 11 guys on the ground.
It literally looks like what did you want to be called now? A-Chan. Like he just pushed all of these guys over on his way. Yeah. It is just wild.
But also, like, if it's a question of who wants it more, is it the guys who just had their soul broken and are down by 40 points, or is it the rookie running back who's about to score his 4th touchdown in a 200-yard game and like make a national name for himself? Of course he's running like as hard as he's ever run before. Like he's probably the most excited he's ever been in a football game in his life. Meanwhile, these guys are out there like, I just want to get out of here. And again, like, you want them to be out there saying, no, this is my chance to prove how much I really care. And that just does not match the level of excitement and willpower that the rookie running back making this statement is going to have.
You're right, but that's not an excuse that I can accept or that this team can accept. And that's why I think it wouldn't necessarily be fair, but why having some accountability from somewhere in the organization. We heard it all last year. Well, why aren't they making a move? Why isn't Nathaniel doing something to change things around? And then finally he gave up play calling duties, which felt like it was way too long. And then finally they fired Nathaniel Hackett, but it just felt like it was so far gone then. And maybe it's already way too far gone at 0-3, just getting blown out by 50 points. But I think that's another thing that moving on from Vance or something would do here is it would show not only was yesterday not acceptable, if you do this, if you players continue to have this lackluster effort, we're not afraid to make changes, and we will pull X player out of the game. And I'm really curious if, I know Sean wasn't going to say it today, but I don't think Vance is being fired today. I think he did answer that. But I'm curious, is a player going to be pulled from his starting role this week? Vance was asked about that when he was asked about the coaches, and he said no, but I don't think he was going to say, no, I'm not firing Vance, and also I'm pulling X player out of the starting. He wasn't going to do that today. But if there's no accountability and no one is shown that what happened yesterday was unacceptable, are they really just going to come out go from the lack of effort yesterday to 100% effort on Sunday? I'm not confident saying that.
Who are they going to put in the lineup, though?
Yeah.
You put in guys that wanted it. You said A-Chain wanted it because he was that rookie. He was hungry.
Because he had 4 touchdowns is why.
He wasn't running like that when he had no touch. He was running like that when he had no touchdowns.
But they weren't defending like that when he didn't have any touchdowns.
Yes, they were. They put up 35 points in the first half.
But I don't think there was an effort problem in the first half. I think they were just bad.
I feel like they miss. I don't know if you should. I feel like missing tackles is on players. I don't know if it's on defensive coordinators. And we saw many times yesterday where it was just plain missed tackles. They weren't. It wasn't like they were in just terrible positions in some aspects. And then also some of it is blown coverages, like that wide open ball to Tyreek Hill. That's a blown coverage by a player, not a defensive coordinator's problem. I'm just not sure that going to a rookie, even though he's young and hungry. I believe Drew Sanders was young and hungry yesterday. This is my opportunity. Josie went down. I got to go out there and play. He didn't play his best game.
He did not.
And so I just think that even if you were to cut somebody and bring somebody else in, I don't feel like this roster is filled with talent just waiting to step up and take their next shot. The roster is put together where you have starters, and then after those starters, in most positions, there's a pretty big drop-off. So I don't think that just putting a guy in there that may be quote-unquote hungrier, it doesn't mean he's ready. It doesn't mean he's going to make more plays, and I don't think we'll get a better result.
No, and at this point, when you go this route, you're not hoping for a better result
Yeah.
for next week, for the week after. You are starting your rebuild, whether you're admitting it or not, but you're starting to develop for the future. If you don't want to call it a rebuild, if they don't want to call it a rebuild, you say you're preparing for the future, getting these young guys ready to play, and while also showing that what happened isn't okay. And for me, what I don't want to happen, Joe Vitt is a guy that's been a defensive coordinator before. Were you with him in
that's my guy.
in New
Yeah,
Orleans?
that's my guy.
Well, I'm sorry to say this about your guy, but some people have been saying, like, move on from Vance and promote Joe Vitt to be the interim defensive coordinator. I don't want that, because I'm not trying to bring the most experienced guy in right now if you move on from Vance. If you want the experience, you have Vance right there right now. I'm doing this for the future. So I'm promoting Christian Parker. You're rolling the dice. What if it's even worse? Because it potentially could be not 50 points giving up 70 points, but like you'd be promoting someone that's never done this job before. And that's a gamble. But at this point of the season, I think that's worth the gamble. Instead of waiting until after the year, not knowing if Christian Parker is a defensive coordinator because you promoted Joe Vitt, who knows what he's doing and maybe stabilizes things. That's not what I want. I'm not making this move for this year. And I think that's the big thing for me is if you make a move, it's not for this year. It's for the future to see if Christian Parker can be your guy, how he turns the defense around.
Yeah, I think even with thinking about the future, I think you still would go with Joe Vitt over Christian Parker. You need expertise. You need somebody who's done the job to even give you a chance, even if it is next year. I don't want to see another first year anything in the Broncos coaching lineup for a little while. Like, we've definitely been hurt enough by first year head coaches or first year defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, whatever it may be. We need people with expertise. And not only has Joe Vitt been a coordinator, he's been a linebacker coach. He's been now he's a quote unquote, what's it called? Like a liaison, helper.
Yeah.
He's done that before in Miami. He was doing that. So he's done that in many places. So if they were to move on from Vance, which I don't think they will, I think that Vitt will be the best fit for it, because trusting somebody who doesn't know what to do, even if it's giving him a shot or opportunity, I don't want that. Even next year, if we didn't go with Vance next year, I still want us to go out and get somebody that's done it. And done it at a high level before. I don't want to give anybody any more chances.
So then really Joe Vitt wouldn't be an interim. Maybe he would have that title for the rest of this season. But if you're Sean Payton, you're viewing it as you're the interim this year. And then if things go fine enough, then we're just going to keep you next year. I'm not going and looking out for someone else. He has a chance to be that long-term coordinator.
Exactly.
That's fair.
The other thing with having a veteran there is it puts the young players in good positions. Like, you can trust him to say, here's who we want to get on the field. Here's how we think we can make them play well. And it might give you a better shot to develop them. And so it's kind of like with a rebuild. Sometimes people send the list like, you just got to get rid of every single one of these players. And it's like all the starters. And then you sit there and think, well, you literally just want a rookie at every position, because that's not how you build a football team. If you do that, then all of them are just going to look terrible. You're not going to know what you have, and then you move on. So, I would be really tempted by Christian Parker just because I think that he's going to be a good defensive coordinator, and I like what I've seen. But if the Broncos say, you know what, we just need to stabilize this so we can honestly just get real evaluations and try to develop a little bit too, I would understand.
I need real. You're
There's
at a
just
point,
no obvious answers when you're 0-3 in my mind.
like if you were to decide to make this move in training camp, then I do get the veteran stabilizing thing. I just think now is the right time for a gamble if you're going to make the gamble. I totally understand where you're coming from too, Todd. But regardless if you're making a gamble or not, you're going to take a sip with some Breckenridge Brewery with our friends over at Breck Beer, the official beer of DNVR. We've got Broncos Country Pale Ale on our set right now. It's the only good thing that's orange and blue right now in this state. So make sure to pick up some Broncos Country Pale Ale or any beer over at Breck Brew. You can come down to the bar, get some Breck Brew, or you can go to breckbrew.com. At the top of their page, there's a beer locator where you can click on that, and it's going to tell you where you can get every single type of Breck Brew, whether it's at a liquor store, whether it's at a bar. So check them out, Breck Brew, the official beer of DNVR.
And shout out to our friends over at Shady Rays, where right now you can use the code DNVR to get 50% off 2 or more polarized shades. Shady Rays are the best glasses out there. We definitely have a few pair on the set. I know they're Hank's favorite glasses. Yeah, there he goes, rocking his Shady Rays. The great thing about Shady Rays is if you lose them, you break them, even on the day you buy them, they will give you a new pair, no questions asked. You can wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase them. Together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners across the U.S. through Shady Rays Impact. And I always think it's great to support nonprofits and give back to your community because your community helps you become the person that you are. So it's great that they're giving back. If you want to be a part of it, go over to Shady Rays, buy you 2 pairs of polarized shades, and use DNVR to get 50% off your deal.
Yeah, go check out shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVR. Okay, guys, today, you feeling better or worse about this? Because yesterday, it felt like we couldn't feel any worse.
I think I'm the same, man. It feels just as bad today. And then everywhere I go at the gym, I think 5 people talk to me today about it. Everywhere I go, I mean, that's all they want to talk about. So it's hard to get away from it and even take a deep breath. But I'm pretty much stay steady Eddie with this one.
On the exact same spot, and no one was coming up to me at the gym talking to me about it. But last night, even when I was done working, I just couldn't focus on anything because I just couldn't wrap
crazy.
my mind around it.
happened?
And literally, I'm having dinner with my wife, and I just but I'm not even thinking. I just can't wrap my mind around what just happened. It was that bad that it's just still in your system, and the Broncos are gonna have to get rid of that or use that as fuel. But yeah, just as bad because it couldn't have felt worse yesterday, and it feels the exact same.
Yeah, my creative outlet was going on to Madden and just rebuilding. I just simulated, started with 0-3, right now, just that bad. And I was like, okay, what we do? And I was trade deadline, moved 3 guys, got to the offseason.
Who were the 3 guys?
Who'd you move? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
He's
let's
Alex
see.
Singleton, Josie
I
Jewell.
did trade Justin Simmons. I did do it. I was able to pick up, it was a second and a good player. I can't remember who it was. And I was like, that's for that price, why not? Because I had to clear out some cap space because I cut Russ in the offseason. But yeah, Bowles, Sutton, Randy Gregory, DJ Jones. Because that's the group of guys who are basically going into their next year, final year of their contract. So moving on is when it makes sense. The cap penalties aren't too bad. And realistically, that's probably what happens. I did wind up with the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams. Went through 3 seasons. And 3rd season lost the Falcons in the Super Bowl.
How about
Caleb
that?
Williams' 3rd season. So there's kind of a happy ending.
Is that
All right.
4 years from now? After this season's done, it'd be 3 years from now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper, Jerry
Not too
Jeudy,
bad.
Marvin Mims turned out to be a great trio there.
Now, you mentioned
Yeah.
wide receivers. Someone in the comment section trade Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. There's plenty of time to talk about all of that. As this week goes on, but there was obviously so many issues yesterday, and one that was really brought to light today by talking to Sean Payton was setting the edge. Was a huge issue with the run defense. Todd, what'd you see on the film?
Yeah, I think they exposed the outside of our defense. There was a lot of crack tosses, but there really wasn't support from the corners or the safeties coming up and do crack replacing, which is replacing that edge of that defense once it gets cracked down by one of the wide receivers. And it felt like we didn't have any edge set by outside linebackers either. There was certain times in the game where I felt like you kind of know they're running crack tosses based off alignment. So if you're lined up in your stance as an outside linebacker and you have a wide receiver maybe 2 yards from you, that's a big indicator. They don't usually want those small bodies in there in that position. So there wasn't one time where our guy, if you watch Vaughn play as an outside linebacker, he takes a step and looks at the wide receiver first. And then that's why he's able to make plays and get over the top because he's expecting it.
Because if he sees the wide receiver cracking, then he goes around him.
Yeah, he goes over the top of that.
Yeah.
So if he's lined up and the wide receiver's here, he's trying to fight over the top.
Right.
There was 2 or 3 times where they had ran crack tosses already, and our guys were still running up the field, and the wide receiver would just take them in. You're getting hit from your back.
Right.
Everybody's defenseless and everybody's weak from that position. And he would take him and just run him down the line. And we're talking about 275 pounds versus $180.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they're winning those blocks. And it's all because our edge presence wasn't there, and they weren't even mindful of alignments and what that's telling you about the play that you're about to get.
The way you break it down, to me, it sounds like that can be easy to change over a week. It's coaching that. It's making sure the players understand what to look for, because I have to imagine the Bears are licking their chops saying, wait, we don't have to throw the ball against this team with Justin Fields unless we're going deep. We can just run the ball. So I imagine they're looking at that and saying, we're going to do this exact same thing. Is that something that the Broncos can change in a week?
Yeah, it's something that can get corrected. I just don't know if it's going to be super crisp after 1 week. Like, I think they can do a better job of it next week. But I think over time, you guys have to learn that and, like, start to understand what teams are telling you pre-snap so that you can be effective in stopping the run and setting the edge.
Yeah. And on top of that, you mentioned like the run support from the DBs. 5 missed tackles from Isang Bassi, 3 from Delarian Turner-Yell. Linebackers help out too. I mean, those are the guys who are flowing with those plays. Singleton missed 4. Drew Sanders missed 3. Like, that's... You throw in missed tackles with guys not setting the edge, and all of a sudden you have games like we saw yesterday, and the Dolphins are leading the league in yards per carry.
Okay, so to be fair, you guys are giving me a lot of shit for begging for Drew Sanders, which, I mean, he had a bad game yesterday, but Alex Singleton had even more missed tackles than Drew.
Alex Singleton made 11 tackles. Drew Sanders made 1.
Yeah, but you said missed tackles.
Well, I mean, there's 11 made, 4 misses versus
And
1
Drew
made, 3 misses.
And Drew came in like halfway through the third quarter.
So he didn't have the opportunity to get tackles. Actually,
Yeah.
crazy enough, Drew started the game. He technically got the start yesterday. And then
because
I think,
they went 4-3?
Yeah.
I think Alex wasn't even on the field.
Alex
the,
was.
The
No, it was
very
Alex.
first play?
And Josie, yep.
He
Alex
was?
and Josie, yeah.
Okay. I know Alex was on there the third play. I just missed him the very first play. But yeah, they're going to have to correct a lot of things on that defense. So for me, just to put a bow on this conversation, I think that they should make a move soon, especially if this doesn't get turned around and promote Christian Parker. Henry, are you on the weight train a little bit?
Yeah, to me, I think after week 5 is probably around the time I start making moves, because that's when you really get a real feel of where you are. You know, this game was obviously fluky, but how fluky is kind of the question. You know, you're not expecting to lose every game by 50 the rest of the way, but you go through 2 games against pretty bad teams and say, okay, either, you know, maybe we're 2-3, so we kind of want to try to build from here and get something going. Maybe that means Vance has screwed these few things up. You want to replace them. Maybe it means things have been figured out. You want to kind of roll with it. Or maybe you're sitting there at 0-5 and say, this is kind of a rebuild situation. You know, we're in prime position to get the number 1 pick. Maybe that's the path they want to go. But you know, 3 games in, I think, is just a little bit too soon. So I go through these next 2, and if things stay bad, then there you go. You're 0-5, and to a lot of people, that's probably a win at this point.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, we definitely shouldn't fire Vance right now. I think that we have to give it time to see how things work out, definitely these next 2 games, and then we kind of would make a decision from there. I think that is definitely too early at this point, and I just don't see the benefit that it brings. And if they do decide to make that decision, I think Joe Vitt is the best person for that job. I think he's very seasoned, and just beyond that, there's a lot of relationships that Sean has within the NFL. When I came into the NFL, Rob Ryan was my defense. Joe Vitt was my linebacker coach. And, you know, his brother Rex is sitting on NFL Network. They were sitting next to Sean last year. Who knows if that relationship comes into play. But I think that would maybe be a good way to pull Rex in, have Joe Vitt take the spot for right now. But who knows? That's all speculation. But, you know, Sean does like to bring in people that he knows and people that he trusts. So who knows?
That is for sure. He likes to do that. He also talked about Nathaniel Hackett a couple of months ago, saying it was the worst coaching job in NFL history. He was asked about that today in the conference call, and I'll tell you about it after I tell you about our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code DNVR when you sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet. That's their way to welcome in the NFL season, and now is such a great time because if you do that, there's 2 Monday night games tonight. You can bet, place that $5 bet, and you know what? That $200 in bonus bet's going to hit your account right away, so you can use it for tonight. You can use it for Thursday night. You can use it for CU on Saturday, and then the Broncos-Bears game on Sunday. So make sure to head to the App Store now, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and use code DNVR when you sign up to get $200 in bonus bets when you place a $5 bet. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NEW-YORK or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccp.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensed partner, a Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Saying all of that, let's hop into our DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. What have we been talking about on this pod? Poor defense. How the Broncos couldn't stop anyone yesterday, and really they haven't been able to stop anyone. That's why this coming week, the Bears defense is also awful. Broncos offense can be competent. And that's why I'm going over. I believe the over-under set at 46.5. There's going to be points. I don't know if it's going to be 47 points from the Broncos or if it's going to be a 30-27 shootout. We're hitting the over this week.
All right. What do you,
There's no way.
You know what? The Broncos have the worst defense in the NFL, obviously. I've given up over 40 points a game. The Bears have the second worst defense in the NFL. They're giving up nearly 36 points per game.
But you got to look at the offense, too. Only 3 teams have scored fewer points.
You keep telling me the offense is taking steps in the right direction.
and our offense is definitely
Bears.
better than the Bears.
Yeah.
Bears. Their offense is not taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
No,
Just wait
there's
till
only
they-
3 teams
Wait till
that
they
fewer
play the
points.
worst defense in the NFL.
Yeah, we'll see.
Shoot. All right, for mine, I'm going to say the Packers are starting to put it together, man. I don't know if they're on a roll or if the love train is real, but, you know, they're only 1.5 underdogs to the Detroit Lions. So I'm going to take the money line on the Green Bay Packers plus 100 to win. I think they're maybe starting to figure things out.
That's Thursday night, isn't it? I like that.
Here's what I'm going to do. So tonight, there are 2 games.
Yep.
2 teams feel like they should definitely win these games. Eagles minus 225 against the Bucks. Bengals are minus 155 against the Rams. Parlay those 2 money lines, plus 137. But there's also a boost, 50% boost on any bet. So you can get that to plus 206. 2-1 odds on the Eagles and Bengals to both win. That's my pick of the week.
Give me the Rams tonight.
Really?
Yeah. Looks
Okay.
like Joe Burrow's going to play, but crazy enough, they have a worse offense than the
That's
Bears right now, which is crazy with Joe Burrow playing.
Yeah, I mean, I said this yesterday on the pregame show, but just it turns out in horrible context. You don't know anything about the NFL through 2 weeks. You know, Cardinals come out, they beat the Cowboys or stuff like that. Bengals are going to be just fine.
Maybe. They were fine last year after starting 0-2.
We did know the Broncos are bad. Not that bad, but bad. Maybe we didn't know. We didn't know they were that bad.
Certainly not.
Oh, and shout out to our friends over at Volo Sports. You know, the best way to get over a sad loss is to go out and get active and kind of clear your mind. So you can do that with our friends over at Volo Sports. You can sign up for leagues using the code DNVR10, where Volo Sports is the largest social sports company in the U.S. The DNVR crew is playing in the Cherry Creek Bowling League on Mondays. You should come and join us. I think a couple people are bowling 300 from our team, so you got to be able to bring it. You can have a monthly membership program that gives unlimited access to sports events and social activities every night. Unlimited pickups, drop-ins, and tournaments, only $20 per month or $200 per year. Volo has leagues throughout the city, including Lodo, Rhino, Uptown, City Park, the Highlands, Sloan's Lake, Cherry Creek, DU, Inglewood, Arvada, Aurora, Northfield, and more. So anywhere you want to play, Volo Sports is there. Again, sign up using code DNVR10.
All right. So today, shout out to Arnie Stapleton for asking a fair question of, you made some comments about the previous coaching staff after yesterday's loss. Do you have anything to say about those comments? But Arnie put it in a 2-part question. So he asked that question, and then he asked another question that was completely different than that question. So Sean took the other question, answered it, and moved on.
That's a bet move from Sean. That's what you do.
It is.
That's those 2-part questions. Dangerous.
Yeah, it is, especially when we're in a conference call setting where they mute you, and then you can't be like, no, what about my other question?
Yeah.
No, it's gone. So the fact that it's been asked, though, I bet it gets asked again. Vance doesn't, or Sean doesn't talk again until Wednesday. But that's that's like this massive storyline that we're obviously following up to week 5, but it's emerged way sooner than we thought because no one thought that this coaching performance was going to rival last year's performance at all. And then after yesterday, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, maybe it is. I still have faith that Sean Payton can turn things around and be better than last year for sure, but where it stands right now, it is a fair question.
It is, and that's what happens sometimes when you come and talk a big game. You got to be able to back it up, or people are gonna be on you about it. I think you hear whether it's Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson or guys that like to talk Floyd Mayweather, like you better come and back it up, or people are gonna start asking questions. So I think Sean was ultimately confident in himself and his team, and rightfully so. He's a veteran head coach, Super Bowl winning coach. He thought he knew and had all the answers. And at this point right now, I feel like, that's a question that needs to be answered. I don't know what his answer will be, but I think he made such big comments. Like, we have to see what you have to say about it now.
Right.
Yeah. These 2-part questions. like you don't. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just what's going to happen. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think he has anything all that enlightening to say. Like, he'll probably say something like, I said at the time that it was a mistake. Even that, he might just say, I've already spoken about this.
Yeah.
I already took that back in the past. Like, I don't think he's all of a sudden going to say, you know what? I see what Nathaniel Hackett was going through. I think that he actually...
I was totally wrong.
Hey, maybe he only could have won like 7 games. Maybe it wasn't so bad. There's no way that's what's going to happen. So, like, we can wait on an answer. It's not going to be anything interesting. Unless he, like, yells at somebody.
Or, if he comes out and be like, you know what? Now that I think about it, it wasn't Nathaniel Hackett. It's Russell Wilson and his offense.
Exactly.
I was wrong.
Jerry Jeudy? Nah, he's not that guy.
It was George Payton.
That would be crazy.
It would be, and people I know, there were some clips that went viral last night from Sean Payton's press conference last night, where he was very upset at a reporter asking a question and really pressed him and started raising his voice. Today in his conference call, Sean was very mild-mannered and little more even-tempered, and that's understandable. He's had 16 hours now to digest this game, where last night he just had one of the most embarrassing losses, not just for him, but in NFL history. So he was a lot more calm today.
But I understand the frustration, and I don't necessarily love the question. Like,
Exactly.
You asked me about how the loss was. I said it was embarrassing, and then you're like, well, not only was it a loss, it was historical. So how do you feel about the historical part? It's embarrassing. Like, I'm embarrassed all around. Stop asking me the same question.
So I totally understand where you're coming from, and Henry and I talked about this a little bit before the show. Henry agrees with you. But what I don't like, Sean addressed the loss in an opening statement. And that's when he said it was embarrassing. I'm at a loss for words. Okay, you can have an opening statement. That's great. But it doesn't mean that then we don't get to ask the questions. And Sean... it was Chris Thompson. He let him talk for like 5 seconds. Maybe he was going to get to a question. We don't know because Sean cut him off. So, I mean, you got to ask the questions, though.
I don't know.
It
I heard
was a
enough.
historical loss. That's fair. And especially in the heat of the moment, 15 minutes after the game's over. I'm not surprised Sean was like that, but I'm okay with the question.
And to you, does it change? Like, if you get your butt whooped, does it change that it was historical, like the worst whooping of all time? Or does it just... I got my butt whooped, like, that's it.
Doesn't it need to be asked, though? Like,
I mean...
It was historical. Those things should be asked. Like, if it's great, it should be asked. If it's bad, it should be asked.
So here's the transcript. So he says, I know you said it's embarrassing, but this is kind of a historic game. I'm aware. Third time...
Sean said I'm aware.
Yes.
Third time a team has scored 70 points over 700 yards. What's the question? And again, so, like, that's the part where it's like...
But then he never let him ask a question. He's like,
But
what's the question? What's the question?
But yes, but again, like saying, what's the question after you, like he said, this is kind of a historic game. Yeah, I'm aware. You don't need to tell him why he's historic. He knows why it's historic. You don't need to tell him that they gave up over 700 yards and 70 points. That's not
I know you're embarrassed, but do you remember that long play that A-Chain had going down the sideline? How'd you feel about that one specifically? Like, what are you talking about? It's all the same. It's all terrible.
That one actually was only like an 8 out of 10 in terms of how it hurt. Like
Exactly.
The same question, if it's flipped and it's the Broncos scored 70 points, it's going to be phrased like that. You know, this was a historical performance. You scored 70 points. It's not just going to be, this was a historical performance. Talk about it. It's gonna be, you scored 70 points, 700 yards. You had all that. Can you talk about how great it was? And I don't know what his question was going to be, but like,
Yeah.
if you're going to accept it when it's good, you got to take it when it's bad.
At the same time, though, in that case, you could have said, so 70 points, it's the first time since 1966 that's happened. What do you think of that?
Maybe he was going to say
didn't
since
like it.
1966.
But then you say, well, since it's the second time ever somebody's given up 700 yards. What do you think of that? Like, there are so many historic things about that game. You could just go through and ask about
to be
each
fair,
one
that was
individually.
the first time it was talked about, though. This wasn't the
Yeah.
third time it was talked about.
But, I
Sean,
mean-
in his opening statement, didn't talk about how it was a historical loss.
No, but again, like,
So I
you
don't
have that
think
right
it was-
there. You don't need to read him the stats. He knows the stats.
I don't think
Like,
it's
I
crazy
get
to
why
say
he's
historical.
frustrated.
I understand what you guys are saying. I just don't think it's. I think it's a fair question, but I understand why he
You
or
would have
someone
asked
else
it?
would get upset.
Would you have asked that like that? I feel like you would have phrased it differently. I don't think you would have gone into it that way.
That's
And I think
probably-
it's the way he went into it
That's probably
by like
fair.
listing things out, and he's like, it's all bad.
I've
Like,
got
what's
the
the question? Just ask the question you want to ask instead of listing all this historical badness out. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you would have phrased it differently.
I also think that Sean has answered questions for Chris that way before. So I think Sean's even a little more on edge. And I do think you kind of do take that into context when you ask questions,
So they had
though.
a history.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. So I think if I understood that maybe I was going to get a short answer anyways, maybe you don't phrase it like that. But again, I understand. I totally understand. your
Again,
side.
the response to what's the question says it twice, which I love. How do you feel about it being historically embarrassing? I mean, that's embarrassed would be an answer to that one. How do you
Yeah.
feel about being? You know, it's tough.
Okay,
You
we've got.
got to ask tough questions. Like,
Speaking
it's,
of questions, we've got a time crunch, so let's hop into the questions. Let's hit some super chats. Ricker Bohr says, "Do you guys see the Broncos going the partial tank route, tanking this year, going or getting the number 1 pick and trading back to get enough picks to fix the defense, get a first rounder and quarterback the year after that?"
if you get the number 1 pick and don't take Caleb Williams, you are insane. Like, I don't care if you have Patrick Mahomes, you do it. Like, Caleb Williams is a freak of a prospect. If you have the chance to put him on your team, you put him on your team.
I hope you don't mean what you just said.
What?
You would take Caleb Williams if you had Patrick Mahomes?
You put him on the bench if you want to, but you take him. Like you.
Oy.
What, you don't draft him? Like,
No.
that guy's a
You
freak.
trade the number 1 overall pick for everything. You get so much. Now,
I don't
obviously, the
know.
Broncos aren't in that situation
Exactly.
because they don't have
Exactly.
him.
So it doesn't matter here. If you can get Caleb Williams, you get him.
I
There
mean,
will-
it's like Andrew Luck falling to you at 1.
Yep. Like, you don't blow that. Although I do agree, like, the idea of putting a rookie quarterback in a team that isn't all that talented is asking for it to not go well. Like, rookies need to be in good situations or it's just not going to work out, especially for quarterbacks right now because you have to play them. Like there's no more sitting for 2 years while you get ready. It's just like you're going out there and you're playing. And if you go out there and the receivers aren't open and the offensive line isn't working, you're just going to either like break him physically or mentally or somehow. So it's not a perfect situation, but teams that get the number 1 pick aren't in perfect situations.
Hayden B says, "I will always love the Broncos, but I can no longer financially support a team that supports this level of play for 7 years. No more jerseys or tickets."
Wow.
I think I understand. You know, it was a hard loss, and I think that the Broncos have done a terrible job for the last 7 years of putting together teams that could potentially win Super Bowls or even get to the playoffs. So, you know, as long as you're not burning the jerseys you do have, I think it's all right,
Especially
man.
the 51s.
Yeah, keep the 51 there, you know. But yeah, they'll get back on track, and you know what I'm saying, you can spend your money in a couple of years.
This one's just tough because it's like, where do you even go from here? Because at least for like the first 5-6 years, it was, well, just go get a quarterback, and then you're probably in like playoff shape. You can figure it out from there. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Then go get a coach, and then that didn't work. And now you're sitting here like, oh, where do you even go?
Yeah, let's strip it all down and see what's left.
Yep.
Not necessarily sell everything. And we're going to really talk about that. Where does the team stand? Is it time to tank tomorrow? Next question from Austin Anderson says, need some more Mims. Thank God for this podcast and the people in it to keep us going through these miserable years. Let's keep it all uphill from here. Austin, thank you so much for supporting us, rolling with us. And we're here through the good and the bad. Unfortunately, it's been a lot of the bad recently.
But this is rock bottom. It gets no lower than this.
Be careful when
I
you
know.
say that.
It's like, how could it
There's
get
no
lower?
way.
They play the
They can't.
0-3 Bears next week. That's,
that's
how it can
fine.
get lower.
If the
0-4.
Bears, the only way this gets worse is if the Bears beat them by 40. Like, that's the only way.
Even
And
that-
that's not even going to happen.
Even that, I still think this one's worse because it's so new.
Yeah.
Like this is the one where it's like this is the dagger. This is like, oh no, nothing you've done for the last 7 years. No, you are now at rock bottom. Like the Bears come in and win. It's like, yeah, the Broncos suck. We know that now.
I disagree because
Really?
I think
You still think they're all right?
Yeah, if they lose to the Bears, then they just lost to the worst team in the NFL, which means they are the worst team in the NFL, which is the realization. At
What are
least
they, the
Dolphins,
second worst?
I know
Right
exactly.
now,
Exactly.
At least the Dolphins were a good team, and so I personally think that would be even worse. And
Nah.
midway through yesterday's game, everyone's laughing. You know, you're just like, I can't believe this. No one's laughing at any point in that Bears game.
Nobody's watching.
There's going to be no laughing at the end of the game. And that's going to be when it's like, oh my goodness.
Maybe in the locker room because they know they have to go through weeks of this. But I don't even think Broncos fans are watching on Sunday. I think they're done.
Apathy could be rock bottom then.
I think we hit rock bottom. I think people are kind of just done.
All right,
I don't think anybody's interested.
2 questions left because we got the Nuggets guys on deck. Mark Phillips says, could the Broncos end up with a top 5 draft pick and still keep Russ? Could get tons of picks in a trade to rebuild this team. I think that would be a mistake if you have a generational quarterback. And a lot of people think that Drake May could be that as well. Then you go that route. And if you can't get either of those 2 quarterbacks, then you're probably not getting a ton for the 3rd or 4th overall pick.
And the thing about Russ, and it's not quite this simple, but basically the way his contract works is you pay what you would have had to pay for 2 years after he's gone. So like you get rid of him after this season, you have to pay him his salary for 2024, you have to pay it for 2025, pay nothing for 2026. You want to keep him for 2024, you have to pay him for 2025 and 2026 too. So that's kind of where the math just gets tough. And even though this is not his fault, like he's played well. Like I think top 10 quarterback, you're paying him top 5 quarterback money, so you're not quite getting the return on investment. The problem is he's going to be 35 at the end of the season, and you either have to commit to keeping him for a while and trying to build around him, but if the team is playing like this, like what, you're shooting for a 38-year-old Russ, so it's not really his fault, but it just doesn't make much sense if things keep going this way.
That's a big question around the tank, which we'll get to tomorrow. Jacob says, Todd, whatever happened to Jordan Sunshine Taylor?
I don't know. My man was nice. I was sad that we ever let him go. I know he played for a little bit longer in the NFL, but he was a playmaker, man. Everybody saw it in training camp. Everybody wanted him to stay on the team, and I felt like he was a talented player for sure.
He might be the biggest training camp darling Denver's ever seen because he just did it every single year.
Yeah,
He just
without a
shine every
doubt.
single year.
Bradley Van
Without a
Pelt.
doubt.
He had
yeah.
some other things going
Yeah.
for him, but yeah.
And final question coming in from Andrew says, hear me out. Trade Wilson to Chicago for Justin Fields and use him like
Oh, God.
Taysom Hill with Stidham being the starter. Get first draft trade down for at least 3 firsts. I think the Bears want Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So I don't think they want any part of this.
I don't think they want Russ, and I definitely don't want Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's for sure. You don't.
Bro, he is
Deep ball, though.
Yeah,
Deep
those
ball,
46
baby.
passing yards yesterday. That deep ball.
121 passer rating on throws over 20 yards. That's going to do it for us today. As you can tell, we've got so much to talk about. If you left a comment on today's pod and we weren't able to get to it on the website, hop over and leave it on tomorrow's pod so we can get to it. Thank you all so much for rolling with us. Even when times are tough, you're always there and we're always here for you. We'll see you tomorrow on the podcast.